fossils of worm Neanderthal males and H. sapiens females. 11 fossils from this cave right here, from Skull Cave, Israel, are described as primitive and archaic, having both Neanderthal and H. sapiens traits. Another large cave near Nazareth contained 11 fossils that date from approximately 70,000 years ago. And again, the fossils were classified as worm Neanderthals, Neanderthaloids, and H. sapiens. Anthropologist W. LaGrosse Clark wrote, "We have mentioned the variability of the skulls found at Mount Carmel and Krapina, some approximating to the typical Neanderthal type, and others approximating more closely to modern Homo sapiens. It has been suggested that the Mount Carmel population was the result of interbreeding between Neanderthal man and Homo sapiens. In the case of the Mount Carmel site, however, there is evidence that this was occupied over a prolonged period of time, perhaps as much as 10,000 years. It may reasonably be suggested, therefore, that the Mount Carmel caves were successively occupied by shifting populations, which means nomadic armies. They were bringing nomadic armies of these worm Neanderthals were coming in there in those caves. Now, Egyptian myths say that they ate their people. They camped in Palestine and ate their people. And this is where Jesus came. He had to go through. He had to evolve from the lowest to the highest, and that's that heritage. Now, historians state that the Sahara population fled worm Neanderthals by passing into Europe in what is described as a single migratory wave. In other words, when they saw these worm Neanderthals coming, they jumped up and passed into Europe in one wave. But the shaman priests established administrative camps in Krapina, Yugoslavia, Sakopath, Italy, Erinsdorf, East Germany, and caves of Israel. In other words, those were like army camps or camps to go out and capture these people. Now, the Krapina remains are fossils of at least 13 adults and children, consisting of skulls, teeth, and postcranial bones found in a rock shelter near the Krapina River in Yugoslavia. And they are identified as being transitional from Neanderthal to modern man. Some skulls have strong Neanderthal features such as heavy sloping foreheads, powerful jaws, and others display the high skull vault and frontal ridges characteristic of modern man. All the limb bones are indistinguishable from those of modern man. Now, the evidence at Krapina suggests that this early species may have practiced cannibalism. The skulls have been smashed, bones have been split, and there was evidence of charring, suggesting that human meat had been cooked. Now, Sakopath Pastor is located near a small tributary of the Tiber River outside of Rome. 2 fossils found in Sakopath date from 70,000 years ago. They have strongly developed brow ridges, and they have the low flat crowns that are characteristic of Neanderthal men. Some anthropologists say that the fossils were intermediate between progressive Neanderthals and Heidelberg tribes of Germany, both being more progressive, more primitive than the progressive Neanderthals, and more like the fossils of Germany, or more like the tribes of Germany, the Heidelberg tribes. Now, Casey stated that the second root of Atlantis, the second generation from the gods. Now, you have to remember that the gods have a long lifespan. They divided into opposing factions, and the sons of Belial formed in opposition to the sons of the Law of One. Now, the Bible mentions sons of Belial. Sons of Belial were led by Homo sapiens and Neanderthals of Albion, England. These were people who had Homo sapiens and Neanderthal heritage. Now, Casey defined them as those who sought the gratifying, the satisfying, the use of material things for self, without thought or consideration as to the sources or use of such, nor the hardships and the experience of others. Well, in other words, as we would term it today, they were those without a standard of morality. He says the sons of Belial had no standard save of self-aggrandizement. So the sons of the law of one and the sons of Belial, tribes of England, and tribes of the rest of the people were divided. And he says the sons of Belial were the ones who merged with the mountain tribes. Now, Homo sapiens Neanderthals of Albion, England, succeeded or withdrew from the kingdom of Atlantis over the issue of slavery. They established a government at Albion and hired scientists from Pisidia to create energy systems like those used in Pisidia. Among those of the law of one, Casey says, among those of the law of one, but was persuaded by and with leaders of the land to apply spiritual laws for material gain, thus brought or aided in bringing about what eventually became the destruction of the material lands. Casey says they were trying to use these, this crystallography. They were trying to use the pits where they turned the rays of the sun that were turned on the crystals in the pits. They were trying to use those and they didn't know how to use them. And that's how they eventually blew up the land. He says, the use of these devices by the sons of Belial brought then the first of the upheavals, or the turning of the rays of the sun, as used by the sons of the law of one, into the crystals for the activities of the same, produced what we would call a volcanic upheaval. Now, the first upheavals created the Sargasso Sea. That's a subdivision of the North Atlantic Ocean. Sargasso Sea should be right about, I don't see it on here. Should be right about in here. I know, it's on this map, on the globe. Yeah, right here. So it's right off the coast of Florida. I don't know why it's not on the map. But anyway, and the Sargasso Sea is like a big whirlpool. And similar to like, it's circulating, it's whirling around, has a lot of algae in it. And these were the spirits that built the system, energy systems in Albion. Now, modern science states that the poles shifted and the sea levels dropped around 53,000 years ago. Now, the earth warmed and temperatures rose in Europe and North Africa. Now, worm Neanderthals were unable to adapt to the warmer temperature, and they largely died out in Western Europe. A small group remained in the Atlas Mountains, a small group of worm Neanderthals, and another small group remained in northern British Isles. The shaman priesthood of worm Neanderthals with expanding Java Australoid heritage, these were the ones who were leading the people, had failed to expand worm Neanderthal heritage. They could not adapt to the warm climate. And so the shaman priesthood returned to Indonesia, and when the lower sea levels dropped, they migrated to Australia around 40,000 years ago, and they became the first Australian Aborigines. This was that shaman priesthood. Now, they settled in the more fertile and temperate southeastern regions of Australia. Now, this earliest group of Australian Aborigines, these people right here, are classified as archaic whites. They have brown skin, genes for fairness, green or blue eyes, and hair that was sometimes red or brown. Their hair grew plentifully on their faces and bodies. Their eyes were deep-seated. I don't really have a good picture of them. Their eyes were deep-seated, their noses broad, and their arms and legs relatively short. They're described as having ancient Western European heritage. Now, the first Australian Aborigines had a strong Java element that was more marked in the past. Like Java man and related tribes, Australian Aborigines were adapted to the cold. Their body temperature and the legs and feet dropped during sleep, and they burnt less energy. They could sleep on the ground in below freezing night temperatures with no ill effects. Now, these people, they have Java heritage and Australopithecus heritage, Java australoid. When it's cold, they are white. When it's warm, they are black. They can have the ability to change colors. Now, Australian Aborigines lived in male-dominated or patriarchal society that was organized into a rigid caste system. Prior to the late 1700s AD, Australian Aborigines were still nomadic. They had no permanent housing. The males lived in clans or bands, separate from the women. Admission to a band required initiation rites that involved experiences of fear, physical pain, or mutilation. Their tribes were divided into numerous classes or hierarchies, each with its own privileges or restrictions that were based on kinship links. They had